guys, I'm asking you, whether you're right wing, left wing, whatever wing you're in, right? Is there any force on earth that can get you to starve 3,700 children to death?
No.
Because right now, those kids who were diagnosed with acute child malnutrition last month are about to die.
In the 6 weeks since Israel ended its ceasefire with Hamas, the Israeli Defense Forces have basically drastically altered Gaza's map in order to take control, complete control of 70% of Palestinian territory. So I'm gonna show you this map so you can visualize exactly what I'm talking about here. This map was put together by the Washington Post. And if you look at it, and as you can see from this map, which uses data from the Israeli Defense Forces, all the shaded areas represent parts of Gaza that Palestinians are now barred from being in. So the darker shading indicates areas in Gaza where Palestinians have been ordered to evacuate. The lighter shading represents areas that are considered military red zones, where Palestinians will literally be killed on the spot if they enter. Now, you might be asking yourself, how is that different from other parts of the Gaza Strip? And the answer is, I guess it gives the IDF a little more justification in their eyes to just indiscriminately kill people. But that is happening throughout the entirety of the Gaza Strip. Let's be clear about that. In total, the shaded areas make up 68% of the Gaza Strip, Cenk.
Yeah, but no, this is about self-defense.
Right.
Of a attack that happened literally years ago. It happened in the year 2023. We're in the middle of the year of 2025. And oh, golly gee, did I occupy 70% of Gaza? Or do I happen to have all their land and I'm squishing them all into a tiny little place where then I'm gonna push them out and take it all while I'm doing self-defense? Yeah. So look, guys, I don't know when the Israeli supporters are gonna come out and apologize because they said it was anti-Semitic to suggest that Israel would occupy Gaza. Well, here we are at 70% occupation.
Right, well, those are the same people who are gonna argue that you're anti-Semitic for making the point you just made. So it's better to just ignore those folks because they're not arguing in good faith at all.
Yeah, so okay, it was always about land, and that's what this is about. It isn't about the hostages, it isn't about self-defense. It's about stealing that land, which they're in the middle of doing now. But what's much worse is how they're starving the children to death. So let's tell you about that.
I do want to tell you about that. So I should note that recent evacuation orders, according to the Washington Post, have covered border areas and population centers that have displaced more than 420,000 people, according to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Now, one area of the Gaza Strip that has been occupied significantly by the IDF is the border area between Gaza and Egypt. And the Rafah border, as it was called, was the area in which humanitarian aid trucks were able to come into the Gaza Strip to provide some humanitarian relief to the Palestinian civilians who are currently trapped in Gaza. But now there is a complete siege on the Gaza Strip because of the fact that the IDF has complete control of the Rafah border crossing and the Philadelphia corridor. So basically, Israel has refused to allow any humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip for months, okay? So for nearly 2 months, Israel has carried out a total siege of Gaza, refusing to allow in a single truck of humanitarian aid or commercial goods, the longest period Israel has imposed such a total blockade. They're using this as a weapon of war. Let's just be clear about that. Of course, that violates international law. They're committing war crimes by doing this. But since Israel is backed by the military superpower, the United States, they're able to do whatever they want with impunity. So the World Food Program announced this week that its warehouses are now barren. The soup kitchens that are still running are severely rationing their last stocks. And what little food remains in Gaza's markets is now being sold for exorbitant prices that most cannot afford. A simple bag of flour now costs the equivalent of $100. Cases of acute child malnutrition in Gaza are rapidly rising, one of the telltale signs of impending famine. Nearly 3,700 children were diagnosed last month, an 82% increase from February, according to the United Nations. And in some ways, the Trump administration has been worse than the Biden administration, not by many ways, but by this particular way. Biden at least paid lip service to allowing humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. Now, he didn't really use punishment or any leverage against Israel when they refused to do so. In the case of the Trump administration, they appeared to be completely on board with this siege. In fact, Mike Huckabee, the demonic scourge on America and its global reputation, is unfortunately now the US ambassador to Israel. And get a load of this piece of garbage.
Dr. Hanan Balki, who is the regional coordinator for the WHO for the Eastern Mediterranean region, called upon me to put more pressure on Israel to bring humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza. I appreciate the message from Dr. Balki, and today what I would like to suggest is that we work together on putting the pressure where it really belongs, on Hamas, to give us the opportunity to open up those humanitarian channels. So we call upon Hamas to sign an agreement so that humanitarian aid can flow into Gaza to the people who desperately need it. When that happens and hostages are released, which is an urgent matter for all of us, then we hope that that humanitarian aid will flow.
I want to be clear, using starvation as a weapon of war, which is what Huckabee very clearly and brazenly was advocating for in that video, is a war crime. Also, it's abundantly clear from Netanyahu himself, the prime minister of Israel, that getting the hostages back is not the priority here. Let me give you his direct statement, verbatim. We have many objectives, many goals in this war. We want to bring back all of our hostages. That is a very important goal. In war, there is a supreme objective, and that supreme objective is victory over our enemies, and that is what we will achieve. In other words, who gives a damn about the hostages? We want to take over Gaza, and we're going to do that by any means necessary. Cenk.
By the way, the hostages might also be starving to death right now.
Yeah, because they don't care.
Like, there's no food in Gaza, so how are the hostages going to eat? So, okay, but they don't care about the hostages at all. Netanyahu couldn't care less. He's like, I'm about to steal all of Gaza. You think I care about 24 or 59 Israeli lives? I don't care about them. If I cared about them, I wouldn't have let the hostages there. I wouldn't have dropped bombs on their heads. They were in the buildings I was dropping the bombs on. We know the released hostages said, yeah, Israel was dropping bombs on us. So how much clearer does Netanyahu have to make it? He doesn't give a damn about the hostages. He doesn't care about anybody except me. If I step down, I'll have corruption charges against me. I might go to prison. I'll be out of power. And the way I stay in power is endless war and endless death and destruction. He's one of the worst terrorists of my lifetime. That is an indisputable fact. If you say there's only two excuses that they ever make, which is no, if a government kills children and slaughters innocent people on purpose, it doesn't count. It doesn't count. Only if the powerless do it, we call it terrorism, right? But if a government does it, then it's wonderful state action, right? The second excuse is Huckabee's excuse. Hamas made us do it.
Right.
Is that right? Okay, so guys, I'm asking you, whether you're right wing, left wing, whatever wing you're in, right? Is there any force on earth that can get you to starve 3,700 children to death?
No.
Because right now, those kids who were diagnosed with acute child malnutrition last month are about to die. One of the kids, like CNN had a story, one of the kids is 5 years old, is down to 20 pounds. Taking clothes on and off causes them pain because every touch causes them pain because he's skin and bones. They look like they're kids out of the Holocaust.
He's supposed to, at this point in his life as a 5-year-old, weigh at least 40 pounds. So,
and there's a mom that CNN talked to who's going through flour that is infested with bugs and pests, etc. And she's trying to filter it because there's literally no food left, right? And so she gives it to her kids after baking it. They throw up, but she's like, "What am I gonna do? There's literally no food left, and they're starving to death." For 2 months, they haven't let food in there. 2 months, there's no food. Mass starvation is collective punishment. It's one of the worst acts of terrorism you could do. And so look, so is Netanyahu a war criminal and a terrorist? Obviously. Ben-Gvir, obviously. Smotrich, obviously. They should spend the rest of their life in The Hague. That is so painfully obvious to every human being on earth other than American government officials and supporters of Israel, period. They're like, no, not enough, right? And don't tell me that you're against Netanyahu and sit on your ass and do nothing, right? Nothing. Have you come out and said, this goddamn Israeli government doesn't represent me? It's heartless, it's inhumane, it's disgusting. And I can't believe that it's pretending to represent Jews across the world. How dare you call this a Jewish state and do this kind of monstrosity? That's how I would react, that's how I do react. When Erdogan does 1% of this, I lose it. Because it's not just the victims of Erdogan, it's how it makes all Turks look. How does it look make Turkey look, or all Turks across the world? And I'm enraged by what he does. Now, Netanyahu does 10,000 times worse. No, Israel. Israel's so important that you could just slaughter those poor people. Already over 15 to 20,000 kids dead. When is it gonna be enough? Yeah. So again, I come back to you guys. I ask you, is there any force on earth, even if they kidnapped your family? Imagine how enraged you'd be. How enraged, I understand that rage. So I'm giving you the maximum hypothetical. They kidnapped your family. Would you murder 3,700 kids? If you say yes, there's something deeply wrong with you.
Yeah,
and by the way, that's the ones that are being starved to death now, let alone the 15,000 that are already in the grave. Don't tell me Hamas made you do it. You are choosing to do that. You are choosing. Hamas killed 36 kids. You've now killed 15,000. Hamas didn't make you do that. Netanyahu chose to do that because he's one of the worst terrorists of our lifetimes.
Final thing I'll say about this. Even the family members of the hostages don't want this. And I give them a tremendous amount of credit for continuing to speak out, continuing to protest the Israeli government and Netanyahu, because that shows their deep level of humanity to want this war to end, to want the slaughter to end. Because by the way, they also know that's the only way to actually get their family members back. But that's not the priority for Benjamin Netanyahu. We got to take a break.
Okay, no, I'm gonna say one more thing.
Okay.
So the EU and the entire world is against this, right? There's only one country left supporting Israel, and that's America. And Mike Huckabee is a Christian Zionist lunatic. He believes that if Israel murders enough Muslims in that area, that Jesus will come back and murder the rest of us and kill at least 7 billion people. So that's the lunatic, the escaped mental asylum patient that we have as ambassador to Israel. So he's enjoying the slaughter of those innocent people while pretending to be a Christian. And if you think that represents Christianity, Jesus, you have a terrible view of Christianity. I don't think it does. So these monsters are pretending to represent Christians and Jews and America and Israel. So there's nothing that America can do because our politicians are the most corrupt people on earth. So the American voters are already 100%, not 100, but a minimum 80% against what's happening in Israel. But 80% of American voters don't matter at all. The only thing that matters is corruption and money for the greedy asses in Washington, okay? So that's why I say this message to good people in Israel. You are literally the only people on earth that could stop this slaughter. If you don't get Netanyahu out, what you're saying is, I'm good with the slaughter. Oh, we're gonna starve children to death? That's what Israel stands for now. That's not my decision to make. That's your decision to make, and you haven't, I mean, in a sense, you've already made it, but you couldn't reverse that decision. You can say, this monster doesn't represent us, and we're not gonna starve those children to death. Israel, it's your choice. Don't come crying later and talk about BS anti-Semitism. After you make that decision, if you murder those kids, that's on you. That's not on anyone else. So turn around right now, for God's sake, turn around. If you don't turn around, don't come crying later about how people don't like you. Oh, what? We murdered tens of thousands of children. We starved human beings to death. Gee, I wonder why people don't like us. Wow, that's so complicated. Let me try to figure it out. No, that's why, turn around. I still believe you can turn around. Well, I hope I'm right. I hope that that Israel finds its moral core and ends this despicable monstrosity. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.